Mark, my friend, welcome to the show.
Will, it's so good to be with you, man.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. You know, Mark, you and I have only known each other for a couple months, but from the moment that we connected, we hit it off for many reasons. But first and foremost is that we both have a lot of experience in construction and now currently work with a lot of construction leadership teams and project managers. And so the content that we're about to dive in today excites me, and I'm really excited for the audience to hear what we go into.
Yeah, me too.
And and so, we'll get into what you're doing today with Peak 81, but I just want to start by talking about your construction journey. I mean, how did you end up in construction, and then how has your career progressed through the years?
Yeah, Will, I love telling people that when I started in construction 26 years ago, I knew absolutely nothing. And I worked really hard, usually underqualified for just about everything that I did. But I spent a lot of focus on learning. Um, Throughout my career, I always made sure that I learned the things that I needed to and prepared for myself for whatever challenge I was facing. And as I rose through the ranks, I went through business development, project management. I was a superintendent, and I focused a lot on pre construction and best practices to make our firm really successful. And for about 5 years, I was part owner of a firm in Longmont, Colorado.
Hmm.
I sold out 2 years ago this month.
Wow.
And yeah, that led me to really wanting to help commercial general contractors be really successful in the growth plans for their business. And that's what I do with Peak 81.
Excellent, excellent. Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about the GC that you were part owner of. I mean, as progressed and you learned, you said you knew nothing about construction as you got
Yeah.
in there. I mean, how did you elevate to part owner in such a short amount of time? I mean, talk about that journey.
Well, I had a deep um, desire to make sure that all our projects turned out really well.
Mm,
And the way that I was able to do that was to focus a lot on planning, a lot on pre-construction, bringing the right team around us, and those kinds of things. And they really paid off. And the founders and the owners of the firm took notice of that and really realized how important that was to our future and for our growth. Like a lot of contractors, our story was that we were a pretty small contractor. When I joined our firm, it was KCI. We were doing about 15 or $17 million a year, which is pretty
mhm,
small. And by the
mhm.
time I left 7 years later, we were doing $70 million a year.
Wow.
And so a lot of contractors have gone on that rapid growth path. And what you realize is that you really need to level up your systems, your skills, your processes, and all of those things to be successful at that kind of rapid growth. And we focused on that a lot, and it really worked out for us. Which, by the way, is why you and I connect on a lot of topics. One of the reasons I really love EOS, because EOS really helps empower businesses and contractors, especially, to do those kinds of things.
Yes, yes. Well, I love hearing your story, Mark, because it's so similar to mine with construction. Mine being, 6 years ago, same thing. I knew nothing about construction. I had started a football recruiting business that I had grown over the years, and then COVID shut it down. And one of my partners and investors in that business owned a large GC here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And he's like, Will, I could use you on my leadership team, could use your help and expertise. Come join the team. And I'm like, I know nothing about construction, but I definitely need some money. So let's give it a
Yeah,
shot.
yeah,
And similarly to you, they were successful on the surface, mid-sized GC doing about 18 million in work, but behind closed doors, things were chaotic. We were missing project deadlines. Our quality of service wasn't great. The owner was working 80 plus hours a week, just wearing way too many hats. And so I had learned about EOS in my football business, and I'm like, okay, you guys need EOS. please, Paul, owner, give me your blessing to implement EOS and let's see what happens. And to my surprise, he's like, yes, let's go for it.
Wow.
And the rest is history. I mean, 2 years after implementing EOS, we went from 18 to 35 million in revenue. We went from about 35 employees to about 60 employees. The owner went from working 80 plus hours a week to less than 50 as he was able to delegate and build this team where he could count on them, and accountability became the norm. We were hitting project deadlines. I mean, everything was dialed in.
Game
And as I
changer.
saw, game changer. And as I saw that transformation, I'm like, okay, EOS works. I want to help other companies experience this freedom and this success. And that's
Yeah.
when I decided to go all in on it myself. So, um,
Well, I mean, just like you, when I read the book Traction, I was blown away. I mean, contractors, as you know, they don't have a lot of free time, right? So if they're going to
mhm,
dedicate to reading something and to exploring a business operating system like EOS, it has to make a lot of sense. It has to be very tactical and actionable. And when I read the book Traction, I mean, that's exactly what it is. There is no fluff. It
mhm.
puts everything out there on the table and gives you a system to really start improving, focusing on the things that are most important. And like you said, holding your entire team accountable to a
Mhm.
really healthy accountability for the organization.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And to your point, contractors are busy, and
Yeah,
all too often they are firefighting all day long. And that's all they've known, is to be reactive, to put out these fires and then move to the next fire, put it out, move to the next fire, instead of zooming out a little bit and starting to be proactive so that they're not firefighting. And as you and I have started to see, is that when these contractors start to get proactive, those fires actually start to disappear because they're doing the work on the front end to
absolutely.
actually do things the right way. And so, Mark, I'm so curious, in your experience as part owner, I mean, what were some of the things that you saw that needed improvement? I mean, was it the schedules? Was it the pre-con? I mean, what were the things that kept you up at night that needed to be improved?
Well, it was three main things. It was our pre-construction process. We needed to plan for projects better, and we needed to be leaders in the
Mm,
pre-construction. It is so easy for contractors to kind of just be passive in pre-con and wait for drawings to price, expect that the design team or the owner are going to pull the project together and make it start on time, and do all the things. And that I realized pretty quick that rarely works out. So we really
mm,
needed to find our leadership presence in pre-con. We also needed to get a whole lot better at scheduling. Like a lot of contractors, our firm, we would build a schedule, and sometimes it was okay. Some were better than others. But once we built the schedule and the project started, we would, so to speak, just kind of stick it in the drawer and it would collect dust, right? The
mhm,
schedule was not really a tool for the project. And we ran into a lot of trouble with that because we couldn't really control our subs the way that we wanted to. And when we hit delays, and almost every project does, we couldn't properly document them. And so there was a lot of tension in our projects about, is it our fault? Is it some other issue that caused the delay? And so we were always struggling with that. And that last thing, the risk management, man, well, contractors cannot just ignore risk management. You can't
mhm,
leave things like insurance to the experts, the so called experts, right? Or ignore quality control. You have to have a really strong awareness for those things to protect your projects and keep you out of trouble. So,
mm.
when we focused on those three things, we really found a lot of consistent success. That was
Mm.
pivotal for us.
Wow. Well, I want to dive deep into each one of those
Yeah,
pillars because as you talk through those, I can just feel some of the issues that pop up with some of my clients, and they can really be thrown into each one of those topics. And so, starting with pre-con, I mean, how do you advise clients to go on the offense with the pre-con? I mean, pulling together the architecture and the design, pulling together the subs and the bidding, pulling together your team and mobilizing them so they're ready to go and start that project on time? I mean, what does it actually look like to be efficient in the pre-con department?
Yeah, great question. Well, I love telling my clients that I have this unique experience that when I first got into commercial construction, the first project I was a part of was this big, huge project, and it went really, really well. We finished it early. We got $1 million completion bonus. We came in under budget, all the good things that you want to happen for a project. So I,
Mhm.
I saw a model of how a project can go really, really well. And then after that, it was something like the next 4 or 5 projects just seemed like they were nothing but chaos. And what I realized in going through those projects is that the same patterns tend to show up throughout construction projects, same patterns of what's going wrong, right? It's like it's that design detail that didn't get discussed and ironed out, the questions that didn't get asked, right? Or hiring the wrong subcontractors. Things like that led to most of the problems that we were having. So I really encourage my contractors to not just sit through pre-con passively, but to one, really train their people, really train their pre-construction managers, and to have a system to guide the project through the pre-con process. Things like pre-construction schedules, checklists for early engagement, right? Getting the field involved in constructability reviews in the drawings. All those things will pay enormous dividends if you invest in those things up front. They'll just pay great rewards when you actually build the project.
Yeah, the checklist is such a simple tool that just gets overlooked, and again, it's something that I is still on the issues list for many of my construction clients. Like, why are we failing in the pre-con department? And I'll
Yeah,
blatantly ask, like, what does your checklist look like?
yeah,
Well, we have one, but we don't really use it. Okay, well, there's the source of your problems. Like, how
right.
does everyone know when something is actually done? And then how do we know the next steps? How do we know what the next steps are to complete this milestone to get us a step closer to actually starting the project? It's so basic,
It,
but it
it,
is
it is.
so pivotal.
Every company should have like a master checklist for a project. As soon as they win that project and they get into the pre-construction phase, there should be this. It's almost like a guide. In my language, I call it the Project 360, and
Mhm.
it's a guide for everything that you need to think about from the permits, the utilities, the constructability issues that you're likely to face, the best subcontractors that you ought to use for that project. And if you go through a process like that systematically at the beginning of a project, you are going to identify and start finding solutions for the challenges that you're absolutely going to face. You're going to start doing that from day one.
Mm.
And that is such a difference maker for the project, for the reputation that you build as a contractor, and all those great things. So, pre construction, what I work on with my clients, it really has to become systematic and it has to become a leadership activity. It's not
Mm.
something that you can just let one of the other stakeholders just lead you through. The general contractor really has to be a strong leader.
Yes, and I'm so curious, Mark, because I ran into this recently in a couple of my sessions with a few GCs, and how they set up their accountability chart, and their structure of the organization differently. One actually had a pre-con manager
Yeah.
that was responsible for managing all of pre-con and facilitating that process. Another client didn't have that, and so what is your recommendation, or what have you seen to be the most successful? Is that a specific role, or is that something that that the PM manages, that leadership manages? Talk through that.
Well, I mean, my recommendation is for every company, first of all, to have an accountability chart. The accountability chart is such a wonderful tool. And Will, you have probably seen the same thing. Almost every company has an org chart, right?
Mhm.
And it's a sort of like half developed, sort of tree like chart. But the accountability chart just really takes it so much further.
Yes.
And because it clearly defines the key tasks for every position in the company, all the seats that you have to have in your company for it to run well, and it clearly assigns the accountability. And that's the
Mhm.
key, right? Is who's ultimately accountable for what. And
Mhm.
once contractors really iron that out and identify that and clarify that, that really also changes the dynamic of how people work. So I really recommend to them to make sure they invest the time in creating that. But with the pre-con, it's also a function of accountability, right? The pre-construction manager really has to know what's going on with that project and what the next few steps in that project are going to be. And that should really continue to be a collaborative conversation, right? The pre-con manager shouldn't be working in a silo. They should be reporting to company management, to the project manager that's going to run the job, and so forth, where that project stands, what challenges they're dealing with, and what the next steps are. And it keeps everybody working together.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, and again, this is so fresh in my head, in my mind, because I just got done with these sessions over the last couple of weeks. Um, but another gap where issues tend to pop up is that project pass off from when the pre-con is nearing completion, the project is getting ready to start, and
Yeah.
that pass off from pre-con to project manager to superintendent. So many times these construction companies have 10, 20, 50 projects going on. A superintendent is getting pulled from this job. Okay, it's finished up on a Friday. Monday, you're going straight to that job
Right.
and hasn't
Right.
been properly educated on what's necessary to execute that new job in the right way. And so, talk through that. I mean, how important is that pass off meeting? Because, quite frankly, I've just seen it get skipped way too often.
Yeah. Or just they rush through it, right? I
Mhm.
mean, if you think about it from a high level from an abstract level for a sec, I mean, you can be the pre-con phase can run 6 months, 10 months, 12 months, sometimes longer. And your average handover meeting lasts for 1 to 2 hours. So,
Max.
how could you possibly convey all of that information on a project and prepare the construction team to build this project well when you have all this information in only 1 to 2 hours to deliver it, right?
Mhm.
And what's more is usually the project team, the PM, the super, they often will come to that meeting unprepared, right?
Yes.
Maybe they just flip through those drawings for a few minutes right before the meeting, but nobody has read the specs. Often nobody has seen the bids or anything like that, right? So, yeah, that's really a point where a lot of projects fail is when that handover meeting is not done well. And what I really recommend to contractors is invest more time in that meeting. Nobody wants more meetings, but when you have really good meetings, right? That's really pushes the organization forward. And so I really recommend something like a 2 or 3 part handover meeting.
Mm.
That first meeting should just be like a page flip and get everybody in the room looking at the drawings, making sure we all see the same potential issues, the design holes, the ticking time bombs, as I like to call them, right? And we should all walk away from that meeting with action items, things that we're going to explore, RFIs that we have to write, whatever it is. And we walked away from that starting to really know the scope and identifying the challenges we're going to face. Then a few days or a few weeks later, we should get back together and look at the estimate, review the subcontractor bids, and all the contract is something that we need to look at. And once we've gone through all of that and fulfilled our action items, now we are much more prepared to build that project. So it's a much more systematic approach, investing some time up front that really pays off throughout the project.
Yes, yes. And again, it's convincing the construction management leaders that we're not wasting time by meeting. We are
Yeah.
saving time on the back end. We're saving money. We're saving ourselves from potentially huge fires down the line by investing these 2, 3, 4, 5 hours up front to make sure that everyone is 100% on the same page, that any issues are smoked out early. And again, it affects everything when you're proactive versus reactive.
It, yeah.
which leads to the schedule aspect, your second pillar that you talked about
Yeah.
earlier. And again, you see it, I see it, where schedules are kind of something that are built without a ton of preparation or collaboration, and then they're stuck in a drawer, and they're not really looked at or continually updated. And so how do you convey to your clients and to contractors that the schedule is everything and needs to be the main focus of how that PM properly facilitates that project?
Well, I'll tell you, Will, in 26 years, I have never talked to or met a successful general contractor that does not believe schedule is the key to a successful project, right? If you can't build the project on paper and put the right sequence for it in a schedule, you're really not quite ready to build the project. But the problem I have found is that most contractors know this, and they'll kind of build a schedule, but most contractors have gotten overwhelmed with the software, right? Microsoft Project, for example, there are so many features and it's got so many capabilities. Most construction projects only need a fraction of what Microsoft Project can do, right?
Yes.
And so contractors kind of get overwhelmed with all these bells and whistles and tools. And so the schedule gets built and they just move on to other things. And they don't update the schedule. They don't follow the critical path. They don't set a baseline, which is really important. And they don't track their delays. And not doing all of those things can really get you into trouble if the project starts hitting some issues. So I teach contractors, I've simplified all this into what I call the 5 pillars. And real fast, those 5 pillars are: build a good schedule, okay? Make sure all your tasks are in there, and think through the startup, the closeout, and everything in between, right? Link the tasks and create the logic. Learn how to do that in Microsoft Project. Understand float and your critical path, okay? Set a baseline and update your schedule. And then the 5th pillar is track your delays. If you break it down into those 5 pillars and you just learn how to do those, you're going to do great. And I truly believe you're going to have immensely much more clarity and control over all of your projects.
Yeah. Well, I know that to be true. And so, okay, the schedule's built, you've instituted those 5 pillars. And then what is your recommendation, Mark, for that PM super relationship as the project is underway? Because again, what I start to see with some of my clients is that they're still not pushing that weekly PM super meeting on site or wherever it is to discuss schedule, to discuss critical path, to discuss issues. And because they're getting pushback from the PMs and supers saying, hey, we talk every day. We see each other on site, we walk through things, but they're not having that 30 to 60 minute meeting where they're laying the schedule out, going through the critical path, talking through what's coming 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Have you contacted these subcontractors? Have they confirmed that they're coming in 10 days? Because chances are they got pushed on another project and now they're 3 days late on yours. And so what is your recommendation for that PM super relationship as the project starts?
Yeah. I mean, Will, you hit it on the head. I mean, I've had this wonderful opportunity to talk to really successful contractors, and the best of the best, almost every time, they make sure that their PM and superintendent have a weekly schedule update meeting. They never miss it. And the wonderful thing is that if you do it every week, it only takes 15 or 30 minutes. Right? Sometimes it'll even take less because there's not that much going on from week to week. But they touch base and they do exactly what you said. They look ahead. right? They look and they plan ahead and they say, okay, here's what's coming up over the next 3, 4, 5 weeks. Do we have our ducks in a row to make sure that when our subcontractor steps foot on site, everything is lined up for them to be profitable and get their job done on time? And if the PM and the super get into that rhythm, and they probably bring the project engineer into that and all that, if you get into that rhythm, that proactive mindset, you wouldn't believe how many projects, how many problems, how much chaos you eliminate on your projects, how much smoother they become, right? Well, you and I have a passion for this industry. I love
Mm,
construction.
mhm.
Building is like in my DNA, but I always hated the stress and the chaos that came from that reactive mindset that you talked about. And the schedule undoubtedly is your number one tool to overcome that.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm looking for a quote. 1 second. The exceptional. What is it? The quote is systemize the predictable so you can humanize the exceptional.
Wow,
And
what a great one.
yeah, yes, yes. And I can't remember who said that, but they preach it to us at EOS. And, I also love the book Atomic Habits by
Yes.
James Clear. And it's basically like, show me your systems and I'm going to show you your success.
Yes.
And it's just doing the small things right. There's no option. We're having this meeting this week. There's no option.
Yeah.
Just because we're busy, just things are chaotic, we have to have it. And it's again that repetition. You get in that routine, and once you start to get in that routine, it doesn't start to feel like such a burden. It actually relieves that burden because you're staying on top of your stuff.
That's right. That's
So
exactly it. That's exactly it. And Will, what I'm so curious about is how does EOS play into that? How when contractors adapt EOS, how does that start changing their projects, their systems, and how they collaborate together?
yeah, great question, Mark. Well, organization, accountability, vision alignment, it starts at the top of an organization. And if the leadership team isn't dialed in, if they are not systemizing their processes, if they don't have a vision that everyone can get behind, it trickles down to everyone. And
Hmm.
so when I come in and work with leadership teams to implement EOS, it just gets them in that cadence of that weekly L10 meeting where they're reviewing the most important things in the business. They're reviewing their scorecard, making sure that they're hitting all their numbers. They're reviewing their rocks, those big priorities, making sure that they're on pace to achieve them each and every quarter. They're talking about the most important issues instead of just sweeping them under the rug, where they inevitably will be dumpster fires 3-4 months from now.
Yeah.
Um, and as you know, it all starts with the vision. If the leadership team isn't aligned with where the organization is going over the long term, and then super intentional about the culture, who we are, what we stand for,
Wow.
then those things get lost. And then if you're not intentional with your culture, well, then the culture is going to be what those guys on site, what they're allowing to happen each and every week, right? So if you're intentional with your culture, about your core values, what you allow, what you don't allow, and you're actually able to roll that out, then everything becomes easier. And we take those tools that we implement at the leadership team, and we want those teams to roll it out down through the organization, where those project managers are having that L10 meeting with their respective supers, where again they're reviewing those issues, where they're reviewing the scorecard, where they're reviewing critical path. And when you can get the whole organization adopting that accountability, man, the magic just happens for itself. And I've
I can
seen
see
it
it.
time and time again.
You get me excited talking about it. I mean, we can go for hours in so many things that you said in the last couple of minutes. What it makes me think of is so many superintendents and project managers will ask me the question, how do I get my subcontractors to do what I need them to do to perform better, to follow the plan that we have for the project, right? I mean, we hear that all the time in our industry. And my response to them is always the same thing. What is the culture that you're setting up on your job site, right?
Mm.
When the subcontractor learns that they are going to go work at your company's project, what do they think of as how your company does business,
Mm.
right? And if you have a strong culture and a defined way of doing business the right way, which you create that from all the things that you just described, starting from the vision all the way down to the accountability, those subcontractors feel differently on your project, right? They
Yes.
know how you do business and what you expect, and they will perform differently on your job. It won't happen right away, but after some months and maybe a year or two, you will start seeing that change.
Hmm. It's so funny you say that, Mark, because when I was vice president of the GC here in town, I would hear subs talk about, gosh, we have to go to this job site led by one of the major GC, the biggest GC here in South Dakota, and there was some frustration because they're like, oh, we have to wear our hard hats. Oh, we got to stretch when we get there in the morning. Oh,
Yeah.
I can't afford to miss showing up for a couple of days because otherwise we'll get crossed off their subcontractor list. Like, when that contractor is absolutely accountable and builds that culture out where we're not accepting any BS when you come to
Right.
our site. If you want to work with us, this is the standard. Gosh, people just start to your point. They're like, okay, I gotta be on point. I gotta show up when I said I was going to show up. I need to perform either at or above expectations. And when you get to that point, everything becomes easier.
Everything becomes easier. And you're making me think of, it's win-win relationships, right?
Mm,
But to have a true win-win relationship, you can't compromise your values.
yes.
And so compromising things like safety and quality, punctuality, that doesn't work to have a win-win relationship with your subcontract, between the contractor and the subcontractors, right?
Hmm.
But the only way that you're able to develop that is having a really strong culture and
Yes.
communicating those values, right? Which is another thing that EOS does so well, and the reason that I love that program.
Yeah, yeah, and I encourage my clients to take their core values because one, in two facets. Well, there's several facets with core values. Core values, have gotten this bad rap in the past, just because people will often build core values, stick them in a desk, never look at them again.
Yeah,
But at EOS, we believe that you should live and breathe your core values. You should hire, fire, reward, recognize, review, all from your core values. They're the guiding set of principles that show your people what it means to be successful, to be a great person within your particular organization.
yeah,
Because my core values at X company are going to be different than our competitors' core values across the street. And that's exactly what we want because they uniquely define you. And so not only do we use it to define what a great person looks like in our organization, but we want you to use core values to determine alignment with your subs.
hmm,
So these are our core values. You stick them in front of the subcontractor. Do you align with these core values? Because if you don't, then this relationship isn't going to work. And
yeah,
then, I mean, straight up. And then at the same point, like as you're reviewing your subcontractors, you can pull out what we call the people analyzer,
hmm,
where you do a plus if they exhibit the core value, a minus if they don't, or a plus minus if they're about 50-50. We encourage that people analyzer to be used with your employees, but you can absolutely use that for a subcontractor after a project. Did they exhibit integrity? Did they exhibit punctuality? And if they don't meet that bar that you set, we're not working together anymore. It's so simple.
absolutely, absolutely. You cannot aspire to be a quality builder, right? To build a reputation on high quality, but to not hire team members and subcontractors that share that value.
Absolutely.
And so, to your point, values getting a bad rap. I hear so often in the construction world, values are referred to as just like some kind of marketing fluff. That's just something
Hmm.
the marketing department puts on our website and our brochures and things like that, right? but they're
Mhm.
so important. And when you interview a potential team member, right, how important it is to listen to them speak about what is their perception of the values of their company, and how do they think that their skills and the work that they're going to bring to your company is going to support those values.
Yes.
If you are interviewing somebody and they can't speak to that, it really should give you pause in the hiring process, because
Mhm.
that really increases the chances that you're not hiring the best fit for your company.
100%. And again, it comes back to being intentional with your culture. If you actually have these core values and preach these core values, and your people know what they are, and then you review with them, then what I encourage my clients is, anytime someone does something awesome, tie it to one of your core values. If accountability is one of your core values, when someone went above and beyond, when they made a mistake and they owned up to it and they said, no, this was on me, shout them out for accountability. When someone showed a significant amount of integrity, shout them out for integrity, because as you start to shout your people out for that, now they know,
Yeah.
and they're encouraged to exhibit these core values. Now you're starting to be intentional with your culture, and people are just going to start to act in exactly the way that you want. And if they don't, well, then we got to make the difficult decision and they have to go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's early in the year, but I follow you on LinkedIn and I see the work that you're doing with a lot of your particularly construction clients, and I guess some architects too, right?
Mhm.
But so far, 5 weeks into the year, can you talk about some of the wins and successes that you've seen with your clients using EOS?
Yeah, absolutely. The first one that comes to mind is a framing client, Pro Framing Inc. out of Hartford, South Dakota.
Yeah.
Incredible company. They've been around for I believe 15 years. Incredible leadership team that was accomplishing a lot prior to EOS. But when Eric and Jim and the team, when they signed up for EOS, they just experienced a transformation of the company in a short amount of time. And mapping out that accountability chart, we saw that Eric, the visionary, is also in the sales seat, and was holding on to the sales and estimating part, which was pulling away from his ability to be a visionary, and then was also not allowing him to fully step into that sales seat. And so we pulled over actually their safety director, who didn't want to be in safety anymore, to help on the estimating and sales side. And it just drastically increased their bandwidth in their ability to be able to bid more work.
Yeah.
And so that's just one easy example of success. Not to mention the fact that they didn't have an effective leadership team meeting, they didn't have a scorecard, and so bringing all those things, they just feel so much more at peace at running the business. It's not like things are just happening accidentally anymore. They're actually able to predict some of the success that they're having. And tell me about you. I mean, obviously I follow you as well, and I know you just got back from visiting a client. So tell me about some of your successes.
Well, yeah, thanks. I've got one client I'm so excited about. We did the schedule training for them middle of last year. I've been doing a bunch of consulting and coaching and different things like that for them. Very tactical stuff for general contracting. And they're about to start the largest project they've ever done in their company history, right? So it's kind of a big deal.
Mm. Mhm.
And their project manager and the rest of the team just built the schedule for that project. And the improvement in that schedule from what they were doing before the training has just been awesome. All the tasks are there. There is a clear startup process leading up to the project. The sequence of the work and different phases of the work and the areas are so clean and easy to see in the schedule. The sequence makes sense. And the closeout of the project is very clear and makes a lot of sense in the schedule. The logic, the linking, the critical path, all of it, the improvement was just dramatic. So it's a great example to show that with some training, with some expectations of your team and some accountability, as you talk about, every contractor can become great at scheduling. And so
Yes.
it's been really wonderful to see. They're going to go into this project really well prepared and with a great plan. I think it's going to go really great for them.
I love to hear that. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds like the timing couldn't have been better between you and that client based on the fact that they're stepping into their biggest job that they've ever had in the company's history. And for them to actually be dialed in and feel confident about the project and the schedule going in, I mean, that is everything.
Yeah.
Because if they showed up to that project, probably doing things the way that they've always done it, then there's a chance they're going to misschedule. There's a chance that the quality of service is gonna suffer, and then they may not be able to land another massive project again, right? Like, it's so important when construction companies land that premier project they've been waiting for, they have to crush it, or
Yeah.
else they may not get that opportunity again.
That's right. And there's a lot of money at stake. There's a lot of risk. And so, yeah, they've got to crush it. And the way to do that is to be really intentional going into the project. And that's what they're doing. And it's made me really happy for them, really proud of the work that we do, and just a lot of fun to be a part of this industry. And now in this consulting capacity, there's a lot of great work to be done.
Yeah, and coaches and consultants often kind of get this bad rap for whatever reason. A lot of times people think that there's no use to them, or they're taking advantage, or they can't do the job, so they consult, right? All these stereotypes out there. But what a blessing for us to be able to come in and be able to help these owners and leadership teams and PMs on down to avoid some of the pitfalls that we had to hit the hard way.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the coolest part about what we do is we're helping people avoid those huge fires that we had to go through the hard way to be able to learn that knowledge and be able to pass that on.
Yeah. Will, you mentioned coaching. I had a great coaching call with a young project engineer yesterday, and really talented, smart guy, not a whole lot of experience. So he's really learning the role and stepping into it. But, the company did not have a clear description for his job and a clear understanding of the accountability and the growth path to really train this young guy to be great at his job. So how can we expect him to thrive and do really well, right? And so in the coaching program, I assess, we do a self-assessment to assess their strengths and weaknesses. And then we talk through each of those areas and we create a customized growth plan. And when we got off the call yesterday, I mean, the enthusiasm and the motivation in this project engineer, because it comes back to clarity. Now this project engineer can see on paper exactly their growth plan for the next 1 to 2 years to hit the level of career success that this young guy is looking for. And the company now knows exactly how they're going to grow this role and what they're going to be able to do. And so to invest in coaching to accomplish something like that, I mean, it's just a no-brainer, right? Because the cost of turnover is much, much more than the cost of a good coach.
Yes,
And,
Mark.
we can accomplish a whole lot in doing that kind of tactical and practical coaching.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of money you saved that company from getting clear about this young man's role, I mean, it's so much, because the cost of turnover, the cost of trying to bring someone else to fill that role, and honestly, if that clarity never came in that role and what it meant to be successful in that role and what the path forward is to grow within the company, then that's just going to be a revolving door for that position, and we've seen that, and that gets back to the importance of the accountability chart. And at EOS, we believe in structure first, people second. So we map out the full structure of the organization with no one's name in any seat, because we want to look 6 to 12 months out and determine, okay, what is the optimal structure for this team and this organization to thrive at our best capacity. And so once we get really clear on those roles, a couple of things happen. One is this owner who is probably holding on to too many things because that's what he had to do to bring this organization to this level of success. We start to relieve some of the stress from him because he's able to delegate certain seats that he had previously held on to. So it brings a peace of mind to him and more availability to him to focus on those CEO type roles to really help the organization reach that next level.
Yeah.
And then as we roll that out down through the organization, and we can get really clear on the project manager and the superintendent and what those roles are and what they need to exhibit and do on a day-to-day basis to be successful. And then also, to your point, what does the actual career path look like from a project engineer to a project manager to a senior project manager? If that's not laid out for them, they're just guessing. They don't know what 5 years looks like for them. And then they're going to start looking around like, oh, I want to go apply for a PM project manager position over there because I don't know what my growth path actually looks like here.
Yeah.
So accountability chart is everything.
It is everything. All right. There's so many things that we can dive into there, but one of the biggest concerns and frustrations for contractors is building up people and then they go somewhere else, like you said, right? And a lot of times, you hear a lot of blame about, well, it's this younger generation or people just aren't loyal to the company anymore or things like that. I don't think that's it at all. I think that no matter what generation somebody is from, if you show them the career path, if you show them their growth path and support them on that path, right, they are much more likely to stay with you because they believe that you're investing in them, you care about them, and you're going to help them succeed. They're not just working, right, day in and day out. If you can do that, you're going to have a much better opportunity to keep your best people.
Yes.
And Will, I also want to say something because you mentioned delegation, which is so important. A lot of companies will delegate, right? But then it gets kind of muddy and confusing because they've delegated, but it's not clear exactly who is ultimately accountable. And that's the other thing that accountability chart does so well, right? It clears the path for delegation and it very clearly assigns the accountability. So the person who has the accountability knows it's on them. They know what their responsibilities are. And the expectation is set with very little confusion. And that's the other thing that I love about that accountability chart over just your traditional org chart.
Yeah. Well, first off, if you don't have that accountability chart, how does a president or a founder know what to let go of? Because he's got 30 things he's thinking about on a daily basis. How do I know that I need to let go of the finance seat and hire a controller? How do I know that I'm actually holding sales back because I'm trying to do 10 things and I'm not able to go and pursue new business like I should? When we map that out, to your point, now you feel good about delegating because you have these 5 roles and there's only one person. That's our rule with the accountability chart. A person can sit in multiple seats on the accountability chart, but there can only be one person in the seat. There's only one person in the sales seat. There's only one person in the ops seat. And that is what drives accountability. It's black and white. You are responsible for this. You're responsible for this. If something's off, I'm looking to you.
That's right.
And there's so much power in that. There's so much simplicity and clarity in that. And a lot of times people actually get nervous when I bring up accountability, like, what does that actually look like? Like, does that mean I'm gonna have to work harder and that people are going to be micromanaging me?
Yeah.
No, we just want to build an environment of accountability where everyone's clear on what needs to get done and everyone has extreme ownership in doing their job well. And we are going to call you out if you aren't living up to those expectations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Will, I'd love to ask you what, we're still early in the year. And so for the clients that you are working with, what would be your top 1 or 2 goals for your clients? What do you think are the things that if they would do these things would have the greatest impact on the success of their business?
It's a great question. One thing that I've been really reflecting on over the last couple of months is the necessity to build great teams underneath the leadership team.
Mhm.
Because I, as an EOS implementer, I'm working with the leadership team, and it's on them to roll it out to their teams and to the rest of the organization. And so where I think sometimes there's a disconnect is this leadership team feels really good. They're doing their weekly L10 meetings. They feel aligned. They're all on board with the vision. They're all super accountable. But then when they roll that down to their departmental teams, they're not super dialed in on the departmental L10 meeting and getting their teams together on a weekly basis and discussing those important topics, making sure we're all on track, smoking out the issues. And so if there was one goal for me with my clients over the course of this year, it's for not only my leadership teams to be completely dialed in, but for those departmental teams to be acting like great teams, cohesive, getting in that routine of having that weekly meeting, having rocks and setting
Yeah.
crystal clear priorities for each quarter. That's what I want most, because that's where I know that when we talk about achieving that vision, those lofty goals that are set, when you have awesome departmental teams, that's when that vision becomes pretty much inevitable.
I couldn't agree more. I see it with my clients all the time.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So along those lines, Mark, I mean, what is the number one goal for your clients?
You know, if I could speak to my clients or anybody else listening, and whether you're a contractor or an architect, I would take your leadership team and over coffee or lunch or something like that. This doesn't have to take a lot of time. Have a conversation about what you're being passive about in your business, right? In the contractor side of things, I mean, that could be schedule. Are you guys being passive about your schedules? Are you being too passive in pre-construction? Are you being passive about risk management, right? Do you know the insurance requirements on your projects? Do you know that those insurance requirements are being enforced and that the system that you have in place is actually working and your projects are protected, right? A lot of contractors are passive about those kinds of things. Are you passive about the quality that you're delivering on your projects, right? All those kinds of things. I would make a list of those and start prioritizing, those things that you're being too passive about and that pose a danger to your business, and
Mm,
start working on them. If you can set
yes.
that as a goal and then sort of take small steps towards that, right? In the EOS world, we would probably call that rocks, right?
Yes. Yes.
And start working on those goals or those rocks. Boy, that kind of clarity and intention will really transform your business, I think.
Gosh, I love that, Mark. And as I go through quarterly and annual sessions with clients, obviously there's a long list of issues. I think the longest issues list I had in January was like 78 issues
Oh my gosh.
that we had to get through. But what's cool about that is as we start to solve these issues, the outcome is rocks, these 90-day priorities to solve that issue. And there's nothing more powerful when we come back 3 months later and I've seen that they've hit 80% of those rocks and they've crossed these major priorities off their list, and the
Yeah.
organization is just rolling. Like, it just makes me so proud of my clients when they do that, because I know that these heavy issues that were weighing them down, they're so much lighter because of it. So the fact that that's something that you really want to see your clients prioritize this year, it hits home with me very deeply.
One of my favorite concepts of EOS is living in this 90-day world. And
Mm-hmm.
even though I'm not an EOS implementer, once I read that, I adapted that into my own life and business.
Yes.
You can, one of the places where people fail to make change happen is they take on too much.
Yes.
And there's not a defined period of time and a set of priorities and things of that nature. And when you think in terms of a 90-day world, right? It's the idea of just taking it one step at a time, one bite at a time. And you set clear deadlines and clear priorities just for those 90 days. You will accomplish those 2, 3, or 4 things that you set for those 90 days. Well,
Yes.
now let's compound that over a couple of quarters And by the end of the year, we could have accomplished 15 major goals by splitting them up into these 90-day increments.
Yes.
I mean, what a great
Yes.
way, what a great perspective and a great way to attack these things.
Yeah. I mean, I constantly say when everything is important, nothing is important.
Well
And
said.
so when we're setting rocks, we set 3 to 7 for the entire organization. 3 to 7 rocks, not 23, not 100, 3 to 7. And
Yep.
then we set 3 to 7 rocks for each person on the leadership team. And eventually want to get to the point where everyone in the organization has at least 1 rock per quarter. But putting that cap on the amount of priorities that we can set each quarter, again, to your point, it allows us to focus. It allows us to check these things off. And by the end of the year, we've hit 50 rocks as a leadership team that significantly improved the value of our business. Like,
Yeah.
it's so powerful.
And it's freedom for the brain, right? I don't have to
Yes.
worry about 30 things or 78 things in the example you mentioned. I just have to worry about 3 to 7 things for the next 90
Yes.
days. And you feel empowered. You're like, well, I can do that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So it's just another great example of the practical and the tactical wisdom of traction and the EOS system. I'm a huge fan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Ever since
uh,
I read it, I'm a huge fan.
Well, appreciate that so much, Mark. And yeah, to just hit on that one last thing on the vision and the rocks. So we say 10-year target. What's our big, hairy, audacious goal? Where do we want to take this over the long term? Then we bring it down to the 3-year picture. So this is where we map out revenue, profit, measurables, and then we map out with bullet points, what does it actually look like? So what does the organization need to look like 3 short years from now to be on track to achieving that huge 10-year target?
Yeah.
Then we bring it down even further to a 1-year plan where we set 3 to 7 clear line goals for the entire year. And then we come down to the rocks. And so the rocks for the quarter help feed the 1-year plan. The 1-year plan feeds the 3-year picture. The 3-year picture feeds the 10-year target. It's so cool that how it's laid out. And to your point, it takes these huge things that we want to achieve and breaks them down in that 90-day world so that they actually feel manageable and we can just check those things off each quarter.
It's magic.
Magic. Buddy.
Will, I got to ask you one more question. I hope we have time.
We do.
So you talked about the vision, and one of my favorite chapters in Traction is the chapter on core focus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important, right? Because you and I have both seen contractors in so many different directions, doing so much different kind of work, right? And in the AEC industry in general, right? Not just contractors.
Yes.
And if you take what my experience has been, is if you take the time to look at your numbers, your revenue, your profitability, and study a little bit where you're making your money and where you see most of your problems, you all of us start, usually you start seeing a certain focus that is making most of your money, right?
Yes.
What's the famous saying, right? The 80-20 rule.
Yes.
Right? 20% of your effort makes 80% of the positive results. Yes. And I think that's so true. And I think that's the idea that EOS is getting around with the idea of the core focus, right? So you've seen that play out with your clients?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the goal with the core focus, it's called a million things: vision statement, mission statement. Stephen Covey calls it voice. Jim Collins calls it the hedgehog concept, but we call it core focus because it comes from your core. It's what you love to do and what you're best at. And your core focus should act as this filtering mechanism that you put all the opportunities coming through your door through this core focus. If it doesn't align with that core focus, we don't do it. It's that simple. Because as Jim Collins says, entrepreneurs tend to die of indigestion of too many opportunities than that of not enough. Mm-hmm. Owners say, well, this guy's making money doing this. We can do that. or we can make a slight pivot and do this too, but that takes away from what you love to do and what you're best at. And
Yeah.
so the core focus is everything in helping owners and entrepreneurs to focus, to align around what we do really, really well. And that's it. Nothing
Right.
else.
Absolutely. And in the AEC industry, I think that scares a lot of people, right? They feel like they have to
Mhm.
be diversified in all these different things. And I don't know, maybe you need to be diversified with a few things,
Yes.
but within that, you still have to have an idea, a clear picture of what your core focus is. What
Yes.
is the best fit kind of work for our people, our skills, our culture, and how we do business, right?
Yes.
And chase
Yes.
that.
Yes. Yes. The riches are in the niches, Mark.
Another great line.
Yeah, a friend of mine told me that last year. Shout out David. But the riches are in the niches. If you can just hone in on that one thing that you do better than everyone else in the world,
Yeah.
you are going to succeed.
Yeah. I agree.
So,
I've seen it happen.
yes. Awesome, man. Well,
Will, it's
Mark,
so much fun to share our passion for this AEC industry.
I get energized every time we talk, Mark. So I
I do
just
too.
I appreciate you so much, and I'm excited for our relationship to continue. And Mark, how can the audience find out more about you, find out more about Peak 81?
Yeah, thanks for asking. The best way is to look up my website, peak81.com,
Mm-hmm.
or to send me an email, which is just simply mark@peak81.com. I would love to set up a call, a quick video call or something like that. Learn about your business, what's challenging you, and and just share what we do and how it can help your
Yes.
organization.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, Mark, appreciate you, buddy. Have an awesome rest of your day.
Yeah. Thanks, Will.
Yes.
We'll talk
Take
soon.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.